Chapter 26. Callie opened the door to the shuttle and stepped out onto the starport loading dock. Gao Run was standing a few feet from the doorway. His left arm hung low with his clawed hand next to his knee. He stood as straight as he could, given the natural forward arch of his spine and the slight elongation of his neck. His legs bent the opposite direction of her own, and his pointed teeth gleamed as he grinned at her. His right shoulder was bandaged, and his arm hung lazily in a sling. "Lady Darkseid," he said as he approached her, with his left arm held wide. "Gao Run, my old friend," Callie said with feigned happiness while holding her arms wide. This was not the sort of reception she expected from him. There was something going on beyond the incident that had happened earlier. He stepped forward and wrapped his good arm around her, pulling her into a firm embrace. "Watch that stinger," Gao Run cautioned quietly, as he glanced downward. Her black tail was poised next to his throat. "What's this about?" Callie whispered close to his ear. "I have more information about Marno, the clone you killed at the Eldaron homeworld. You said it was Raven 11, not 1, he whispered into her ear. Her black tail withdrew its stinger and relaxed. "Yes," Callie breathed the words into his ear. "I verified it myself." The old man predicted it would be Raven 1, the clone claiming to be the true Ru Kuhar. Actual Marno is chief advisor to General Vaughn. "Do you see it?" Gao Run held her closely while breathing the words into her ear. Callie nodded slightly. "So then, the old man's first miscalculation was during the foundation of Acorn," he muttered as he pulled away from her. He locked eyes with her as he slowly backed away. "So, tell me," Callie said firmly, "what happened here?" "Your shuttle pilot took one look at me," screamed Drudge, "and started shooting." Gao Run shrugged. "Are you pressing charges?" Callie asked with a smirk. "Of course not," Gao Run scoffed, "but that stupid Vukkar tried to start a gunfight in the cargo dock. He only got off 3 shots before I put him to the ground. If he wasn't one of yours, I would have torn out his furry throat while that stupid crow watched." "I appreciate you not killing my people," Callie said through bared teeth. "I will not apologize for what I did to your bird," Gao Run growled. "I think it's an improvement." "What did you do to her?" Callie said in a soft, threatening tone. He glanced over toward a garbage bin and grinned viciously. She saw the tip of one of Gaori's wings sticking out past the rim of the trash receptacle. Callie narrowed her eyes and lowered her center of balance. "She'll be fine," Gao Run snarled. "We were kind enough to cauterize the wound before she bled to death." Her tails swirled around her. "How considerate." "They attacked me," Gao Run reminded her. "It was within my right to respond to their aggression. Do not forget that. My restraint was in honor of your station, Lady Darkseid." "It must have been difficult to stay your hand with the smell of blood so thick in the air," Callie said, murderous intent blazing within her eyes. Gao Run relaxed his posture abruptly. "It's been so nice to see you again, even if the circumstances aren't ideal. Once this is all sorted out, you must stop by Gistasios for a drink." Callie smirked. "Not this time. I have a full schedule ahead of me." "Lady Darkseid," he said as if she'd wounded him. "I must insist." She met his firm gaze with a steely glare. "Not this time, but do keep in touch." "Very well then." One of his eyes twitched slightly as he straightened back up. She recognized it as a well-hidden wince. His arm hurt more than he was willing to let on. "Where do I need to go to retrieve my people?" Callie asked. "Would you like me to escort you?" "I can take care of that," Shinji said as he stepped off the shuttle. "When did you wake up?" Callie asked with a start. "Just now," he answered. She knew he wasn't telling the truth, but at least he had sense enough to not get in the way. "Okay then," Callie said, lead the way. This way please, Shinji said as he started walking. Gao-run watched them silently as they passed. Each of her brown tails coiled around one of her legs as her black tail wrapped around her midsection. She took his hand as he passed by and walked alongside him. I'm sorry about earlier, Shinji thought to her. Considering which of my memories you got stuck in, Callie thought, I think you've been punished enough. Just drop it, for now. Can I talk to you about that memory? 2 of my passengers are locked up, I think that can wait. So, they're not your crew? They're refugees. They have agreed to stay on, but right now I'm tempted to just leave them behind. The last thing I need is someone putting me at odds with Gao-run. I need him on my side. He's an important asset. I have the impression you two don't like each other, Shinji thought with amusement. First time I met him, Callie mused, he pointed a gun at one of my mother's heads while he held a knife to my brother's throat. Are you saying your mother has 2 heads? Don't be stupid, Callie scoffed. I had 2 mothers. It was a joke. That memory of yours only had one of your mothers in it. So, you were adopted? Manufactured would be more accurate. I'll show you those memories later. I'm going to hold you to that, Shinji smiled. Spend some time strengthening your mental defenses, or you won't be holding me to anything. I knew you were still upset. I'm just frustrated, Callie said aloud. I'm sorry about. Shinji began. Stop, Callie sighed, it's not really about that. Everything just keeps going wrong. It's just one thing after another. After I was given the title of Lady Darkseid, I thought my luck had finally changed. Along with the name came money, power, and prestige. I thought things were going to get easier, but it just got even more complicated. It was just one more thing. So, what do you want to do? We could just go back to that mansion your people gave you, and wait it out. You could just let things sort themselves out. That's not an option either, Callie grumbled. My brother will be here in less than 3 years, and I'm the only one that can stop him. Your brother Vance? The same brother from that memory? Shinji asked. After all that's happened, I'm not sure how to answer that. Callie shrugged. They paused at the entrance to the security office. Shinji entered in an access code and opened the door for her. A uniformed guard sat behind a clear blast shield. There was a thick metal door to the left of the guard station, and several uncomfortable-looking chairs arranged in rows. There wasn't anyone else waiting to be seen, not the man behind the glass looked like he'd notice if there was. The Lunarian would have looked like a Terran if it wasn't for his unblinking black eyes and his deep green scales. He hadn't looked up once since their arrival. He was endlessly flipping through paperwork. Callie and Shinji had both tried knocking on the blast shield and had pressed the button intended to get the man's attention, but he simply refused to acknowledge their presence. How long have we been here? Callie growled. I'm not sure, Shinji grumbled. Probably only 5 or 10 minutes, but it sure feels longer. I'd like to shove their psionic suppression field generator up his. Don't say it. They're probably listening. I could level this entire facility, Callie said angrily. If they ignore me any longer, I just might. She began pacing. You should have worn your armor if you're going to talk like that. Tyrell, Callie said angrily, load up a schematic for the starport security office. You're not seriously considering this? Shinji gasped. I've got it up now, Tyrell said over her personal communicator. Can you guide me to where my people are? Callie growled. I'm tired of being ignored by the idiot at the main desk. There isn't anyone at the desk, Tyrell said in confusion. You're a psionicist. Can't you tell? It's just a hologram. They have a suppression field active down here, Callie sneered. So no, I couldn't tell. Before you go on a merry little murder fest, Tyrell chuckled, how about you try doing things my way this time? What do you have in mind? What's going on? Shinji asked. Tyrell wants to try something, Callie answered. He is a cyberpath. Let him give it a shot, Shinji urged. The hologram projector and psionic suppression equipment deactivated. Ask your... What was it you called him? Tyrell teased, inventory, was it? What alarms does he think I should trigger? I'm thinking that empty desk should confuse them enough. Callie turned to Shinji. He wants to set off an alarm or two, what would you recommend? Why set off an alarm? Shinji asked. Can't he just use the alarm system as an intercom or something? No good, Tyrell answered over her earpiece, but that gives me an idea. It looks like there are only 2 guards on patrol in there. The rest are either in the break room, kitchen, or attached barracks. I'm going to initiate an emergency lockdown. You'll just have to neutralize 2 guards. I can guide you right to the cells they put our little troublemakers in, and I can keep you off the cameras. Are the ones on patrol the 2 that are closest to us? Callie asked. Wait, Shinji said urgently. Just go through the employee list. We don't have that many Lunarians on staff. Just page him to the front desk. You don't have to kill anyone. I've already seen enough death for one day. Kiva, please. Callie stiffened as he spoke the name. He called you Kiva, Tyrell said in surprise. I thought you didn't like that name. Don't call me that in public, Callie scolded. She'd forgotten to modify his memories and made a mental note to rectify the situation later. Sorry, Lady Darkseid, Shinji said with a smile. What do you think? Tyrell asked. Should we just page him, or do you want to teach the locals not to cross you? Giving the Port Authority a reason to fear me as much as they fear Gao Rune would be nice, Callie said with a deep sigh, but for Shinji's sake just page the slacker, and permanently disable that hologram emitter. I'm starting to understand why you insist on verbal communication on the ship, Shinji admitted. It's frustrating listening to one side of a conversation. You're not going to like this, Tyrell said, the Lunarian image they're using doesn't match any of the employees. I'm guessing it's so nobody gets reported while they're all playing cards in the break room. Are they seriously just sitting around playing cards? Shinji blinked in disbelief. Wow, really? Can you use that projector to show me a floor plan? I want to know where that break room is. Callie snarled. Not a problem, Tyrell chuckled. It should be displaying now. Deactivate the alarm systems, and open that door, Callie said firmly. Tyrell played a recording of her own whispered voice over her earpiece. They called me Kivaza. It's all in the pronunciation. Edikoneg called me change, Sadakar called me destiny, but if the emphasis is on the first syllable it means turmoil. Why did I let him call me Kiva? Cute, Callie grumbled. Go and create some turmoil, Tyrell chuckled softly. The security door swung open. Shinji, Callie instructed, I want you to stay here, just in case they try something stupid. She unfurled her tails as she strode through the door and into the hallway. She continued past the entry to the main security desk, beyond the restroom and supply closet, between the rows of storage lockers, and up to the wall just before the doorway leading into the break room. She stood there for a moment and listened to the sound of cards being played, drinks being lifted and then placed back on the table, and the clicking sound of their chips being counted and bets being placed. Deeper into the office she could feel the minds of the guards that were on patrol as they rushed through their rounds so they could return to the game. Callie waited until they started dealing the next hand of cards, then stepped into the doorway. Only one of the guards was facing the door, but she was too busy counting her chips to notice her. I thought you should know your hologram's broken, Callie said in a casual tone. Are you sure? The dealer muttered. It was working fine the last time I checked. Just call maintenance, the guard with his back to the door said. Just reset it, the guard that was counting his chips said before looking up. Who in the name of the powers are you? The powers indeed, Callie giggled. The guards all stood and drew their sidearms. I'm Lady Darkseid, she said forcefully. I believe you're holding 2 members of my crew. I'd recommend putting away your toys. If I wanted to kill you, I would have. I was even nice enough to wait until you finished your last hand. Don't expect me to be charitable twice. So, which one of you is going to retrieve my people, or do I need to compel you to do so? There's a dampening field, the dealer said with a snort. Callie used her telekinetic ability to shift all of their chairs, slightly, beneath them. I had that disable along with your hologram projector, Callie said with a sly grin. I'll be heading up front now, waiting for you to deliver my crew members to me. Don't make me wait long. I'm not known for my patience. Wait, the woman who had been counting her chips said with a faint note of desperation in her voice. I'll take you to them. Hang on, Lucy, the dealer said, let me just record your losses. You're already down 2 paychecks. It looks like you're going to have to move back into the barracks, the guard with his back to the door laughed mockingly. The female guard stood and looked down at the table in disgust. My luck is going to change soon, I can feel it in my bones. Please come with me, Lucy said as she walked past Callie and into the hallway. Callie followed 3 paces behind the woman as she was led toward the holding cells. So, can you tell me what actually happened? Callie asked. It was all over by the time we got there, the woman said with a shrug. After we were told who they were with, and verified the owner of Guise Tasios wasn't pressing charges, we were instructed to move them to the holding area and not take any further action until your arrival. Just pay the fines and they're yours. What fines? Callie asked. Not much for the avian, but the counter-hominid discharged his firearm in the loading dock, which has a steep penalty. If you can't afford it, we'll just contact the Kailani Dominion for payment. We offered to contact them earlier, but he refused. Counter-hominid, Callie mused. I guess Syntholo finally showed his teeth. Lucy was an Udbar, like Prask. Callie's mind wandered as she followed the woman through the snaking corridors. During the days of the ancient Eldaron Empire, several Ark ships had been sent to the ancestral Terran homeworld prior to its devastation by the Kolmian Empire. Their planet was, rather unimaginatively, called Earth by its inhabitants. They called themselves human in those days, and were all part of a single species, although many of the planet's inhabitants would have disagreed. The Udbar ship had been filled, mostly, with humans who had monetary, political, religious, or military power, their supposed cultural elites. The belief in their own superiority led to disregard the guidance of races that had managed to thrive for millions of years and attempted to colonize the inhabited world. The Namdak might not have minded sharing their homeworld if the colonists hadn't insisted that they were the rightful heirs of Nygar. After years of feudal, bloody turmoil, these Terrans had to resort to cannibalism just to survive. They became far more civilized since then, but these green-skinned, yellow-eyed Terrans were stuck being called the Udbar, a name that was given to them by the Namdak Khan. It was a word that loosely translates to I consume myself. The slate-gray wall opposite of the holding cells was adorned only by a single strip of dim yellow lights. The cells were square 8x8 rooms with 10-foot ceilings, with a medium-sized mattress, a hole in the floor to substitute for a species-specific toilet, and a basic sink. In front of each cell was a force field barrier with a 2-foot width wall on either side. The wall on the right side had a small slot through which food trays could be passed. A small console adorned the center of the wall on the left. A row of lights above and below the entrance of each cell indicated whether the field was active or not. After rounding the corner, Callie had noticed only 3 fields were active. 2 of the cells were next to each other, the third was at the furthest end of the row. Lucy stopped at the first of the neighboring cells and watched Callie silently. Gowrie was sitting in the corner of the room, shivering. Her back and right side were coated with a layer of dried blood. The feathers near where her wing had once been had been burned off and the skin was blackened. It looked like Gowrie had cauterized the wound with a welding torch. He'd taken her good wing. "I'm so sorry," Callie said as she tried to use empathic projection to soothe her. "I didn't want you to come down here with Syntholo. I should have stopped you." "Don't be," Gowrie whimpered. "If I hadn't come, that bastard would have killed him. I saw him, crouched over Syntholo, about to rip out his throat. I went insane. I attacked the drudge. I bit deep into his shoulder, so deep that I felt my teeth scraping bone. Then he grabbed my wing and pulled it back until I felt it snap. When I opened my beak to scream, he flung me down, stood on my spine, and then..." Gowrie whimpered softly while trying to regain her composure. "It was horrible. I'm so sorry," Callie said softly. "Syntholo lives, and that's all that matters," she insisted. "He and I are so different, but I love him. I couldn't just stand there and let that monster kill him." "Can you stand?" "I don't. I feel weak from losing all that blood." "I'm going to talk to Syntholo," Callie said. "I'll be back soon." "Please be quick," Gowrie begged. "I can't bear being caged like this." "Turn off the field," Callie said to Lucy. Lucy walked over to the console and entered a code. "All you need to do is present your identification chip and pay the fine." "How much is it?" Callie grumbled as she walked over to the console. 350 credits and she's free to go," Lucy said. Callie waved her right forearm in front of the sensor. The field indicator lights went dark. "Gowrie, you're free. I'll come and help you out of there after I get Syntholo." "Thank you," Gowrie said with a shuddering sigh. Lucy walked down to the next cell. The loss of her wings had clearly caused deep psychological trauma to the woman. Her wings had been her pride, and Gowrie's actions had both hobbled and humbled her. "This one's a real troublemaker," Lucy said as Callie approached. "We weren't sure exactly what he was, so we ran some tests. I feel I should warn you, the results came back like a... I guess a few survived the destruction of their homeworld. Damn protomorphs can't be trusted. Are you sure you want him back?" "Leica only have 2 forms." Callie snapped. "They're just protomorphs, shapeshifters. It's not like they're changelings. They look like Terrans or like that." Lucy snickered. "I've been watching the cell video feed," Tyrell said over her earpiece. "Is that really him?" Callie reached out with her telepathy, but it seemed like her thoughts slid off of his consciousness. "Yeah, that's him all right," Callie said. The cell was dark as if it had been flooded with black smoke. Electricity flickered around a bestial form pacing within the darkness. Glowing yellow eyes peered out from the midst of the shadows. She couldn't quite make out his form or features. In his Terran form, Syntholo was uninteresting, common even. He looked like a stereotypical jug-headed soldier, but in his bestial form, prowling around in that cell, there was an elegant, terrifying beauty to him. Was this how Gowrie had first seen him? That would certainly explain a few things. "Syntholo, what kind of animal did you bond with?" Callie asked with a smile. "And whose nightmares did you find it in?" "Why was there a drudge lying in wait when I landed?" Syntholo roared. "Did you see what it did to Gowrie?" "That drudge is one of my most important contacts on this planet," Callie said in an icy tone. "You've always been so calm and professional. I didn't expect you to have such an irrational hatred toward another species." "The drudge aren't a species," Syntholo scoffed. "They're a damn plague. You don't know them the way I do." Have you ever seen them rip a hole between this universe and the accursed place they come from? Have you ever watched as they pour in through a tear in the very fabric of reality itself, murdering every their path? I've seen it. Entire worlds have been ravaged by those things. They're carnivores, did you know that? They'll eat men, women, children. The younger the better. I've watched them fight over babies freshly torn from a mother's womb. They won't fight among themselves for just any meat, only infants or the unborn. They're abominations, fiends that need to be destroyed before they invite more of their kind into. Galroon has been with Project Acorn since the beginning, Callie said. He's been on this planet for at least a decade. If he was planning on opening a rift to some other world, don't you think he would have done it by now? He's still a drudge, Syntholo insisted. It's in their nature. Yes, he's a drudge. He's about as aggressive and unpleasant as they come. Not the sort of creature you just described, Callie growled. If you assumed he was, it may explain your actions, but it doesn't excuse them. The flickering electrical field flowing around Syntholo slowly waned. If you are going to be traveling with me, and acting on my behalf, I have to be able to trust you, Callie said sternly. The actions you take don't just reflect on you. The inky darkness within the cell began to subside as if Syntholo was drawing it back into himself. What you did today could have damaged my authority, and it reflected badly on the Dominion. Callie glared at him as she spoke. You told the guards you didn't want Mistress Kaylani being notified. Was that pride or shame speaking? The brightness of his glowing yellow eyes dimmed, and the shadows around him faded away. I missed, Syntholo said. I didn't hit him once. He was on me before I could finish shifting forms. He caught me at the most vulnerable point of my transformation. I could feel his claws closing around my throat. Then the damnedest thing happened. He spoke to me. Syntholo's features in his bestial form were similar to Cynthia Porter's fox-like visage but larger and more muscular. His fur was thick and black with broad white stripes running down the side of his head, starting just below his ears. The white bands continued down the dense fur on his tails, ending at the tips. Callie wondered how Cyanide would rate his stripes, as Callie's official stripe inspector. Callie struggled to suppress a smile as Syntholo continued to speak. I'd never heard a drudge speak before, I didn't know they could. The next thing I knew Gauri was attacking him. She thought she was saving me. In the blink of an eye, he'd turned on her, rending her good wing. I couldn't stop him. I was paralyzed with fear, all because a drudge spoke. What did he say? Callie asked. He told me your name would protect me as long as I didn't move, Syntholo said sadly. If only Gauri could have heard what he'd whispered in my ear. What happened today was my failing. I do recognize that I am culpable for what happened to her. She was maimed as a result of my poor judgment. The word shame is grossly inadequate. He began to shift back into his humanoid state. The plates of his armor had been designed to shift when he transitioned between forms. Callie felt almost relieved that he'd changed back to his less interesting form. Callie turned her attention to Lucy. How much is his fine? The Udbar walked over to the small terminal and entered a code. It took a little longer this time than it had for Gauri. He discharged his firearm in the loading bay 3 times. Each shot fired carries a fine of 10,000 credits, and then there's the brawling fee of 250 credits and a processing fee of 1,000 credits. So, your total is 31,250 credits. You added the processing fee to cover your gambling losses, Callie snickered. Lucy looked toward the floor. Your lip twitched, Callie said. It's a pretty obvious tell. You may want to work on that. I'm sure your coworkers have noticed it too. I'll take off the fee, Lucy blushed. Callie held her arm in front of the electronic chip reader. Don't bother. I'll just pay it, Callie said with a warm smile, provided that you tell me about the prisoner you have in the cell at the end of the row. It looks empty from here. It is empty, Tyrell scoffed over her earpiece. Standard optics, infrared, ultraviolet, motion sensors, audio, electromagnetic, all clear. There's nobody in there. Yes, Lady Darkseid, Lucy said enthusiastically. Callie authorized the payment. And the force field indicators turned off. You just threw away 1,000 credits, Tyrell said irritably. Syntholo, Callie said firmly, go assist Gowri, while I satiate my curiosity. I don't believe you're wasting time on this, Tyrell's voice jeered over the communicator. Please come with me, Lucy said with a slight bow of her head as she walked down the hallway. Callie paused for a moment before following and whispered angrily. There are communicators that allow telepaths to talk to cyberpaths. Order some, update my comms, or something, so I don't sound like a lunatic when I start yelling at you to keep your commentary to yourself. I'll see what I can do, Tyrell grumbled. I've never heard of that kind of tech before. Ask Squiddy and Killer Lime where they got theirs, Callie muttered angrily. Her twin brown tails slithered, snake-like, along the floor behind her as she followed the woman down the hallway. Her black tail coiled loosely around her waist as if it were waiting for something. I've never seen anything in there, Lucy said as they drew near the barrier. Our records show they brought something in. The field hasn't been lowered since. We slip in food a few times a day. It disappears when nobody's watching, and the sink turns on and off randomly. There's never anything on sensors, so half the crew thinks the room is haunted, and the other half thinks it's just an elaborate practical joke. Callie narrowed her eyes so she could see the energy flowing through the area. Damn force field, she grumbled under her breath. I can't see past it. What? Lucy asked in confusion. Callie opened her eyes fully and let them readjust. Don't worry about it, Callie sighed. So, Lucy asked, is there really something in there? There sure is, Callie smiled. It's an Ilanjani. Invisible people, that are completely undetectable by any sensors? Tyrell laughed over her communicator. You've got to be kidding. The Information Society just spread that rumor to make people paranoid. I've already had to kill one, Callie said irritably. They exist. She looked in the cell and said, well, if you ever want to get out of there, you'll have to show yourself. You were brought in on suspicion of being a spy. If you don't talk to me, there's nothing I can do to help you. Callie turned to Lucy and said, I'll be back in about a week. Make sure the others know what they're dealing with. Yes, Lady Darkseid, Lucy smiled. Callie marched down the hallway to Gowri's cell. Syntholo was sitting with her, trying to console the avian woman. She was injured because of your inability to show restraint, Callie said, so you'll be the one carrying her. We just finished offloading the second shipment, Tyrell said over the communicator. I'm bringing the shuttle back to the surface now, so take your time. Syntholo gently ran his hand across the feathers on the side of Gowri's face. I'm sorry this happened to you, he said softly. I'll endure the strain of carrying you as penance for my actions. This is my doing, so I am willing. Not for Lady Darkseid, but for you. It's all right, Gowri cooed, I saw how hard he hit you. I saw the pain in your eyes when you hit the ground. Please, don't injure yourself further on my account. Look at me. I'm just a bird with broken wings. What good am I to anyone? Don't say things like that, Syntholo soothed. Tyrell, I have a special assignment for you, Callie whispered. Research the proper usage of changeling mutation cores. I think I'll be arranging a miracle when I get some time to spare. It's that or listen to more of this. Good luck finding one, Tyrell scoffed. Actually, I had a spare when I used mine. So. We're back to our infinite chain of questions, Tyrell chuckled. Have you ever heard the story of the fox and the crow? Never heard it, Callie muttered. It's an ancient Terran fable, Tyrell remarked. I just hope things turn out better for those two. Gowrie wrapped what was left of her remaining wing around him as he picked her up. What do you mean those two? Callie asked quietly as she turned and walked away. He's trying to excise his guilt, and she's milking it for all it's worth. So, the cheese represents forgiveness, in this case, Tyrell mused. What cheese? Callie asked. What are you talking about? Never mind, Tyrell laughed. It's not worth explaining.